we are on the freedom flight.
Well, that didn't last long, did it? I am certain you have all heard by now that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are going back to the UK with their children, to the land where it's life-threateningly dangerous and there are people who would make it impossible for Meghan to take her kids to school, the media, the press intrusion. Remember when she said in The Cut, I wouldn't be able to take them to school the way I do here in California? And why would I serve up my children on a silver platter to those who call them the N-word? Never mind that, number one, no one ever did. And number two, Lilibet wasn't even born when they were in the UK. But yes, it appears that after terrorizing the US for 6.5 years, my sincerest condolences, by the way, I'm pretty sure they're never gonna come here in Japan. So that's good news. But they've decided to resume their reign of terror in the UK instead. It's like a kid who packs their things in the dead of night and threatens or actually runs away because their parents didn't allow them to bring a boyfriend or a girlfriend over or something stupid like that, only to come back with their tail between their legs after a few hours because they figured out they couldn't really cut it in the real world. Except Meghan and Harry are middle-aged people in their mid-40s, but the analogy stands. When I first found out last week that they were coming back, my immediate reaction was surprise, but then it was instantly overridden by, of course they are. The writing's been on the wall. Unlike Megxit, which was genuinely a shock to me. Now, mind you, I was someone who wasn't at all invested in the royal family at the time, didn't really know, much about Meghan and Harry other than, oh, they got married. And I liked Meghan, based on what I saw of her in public, but I really didn't care. And I was still shocked. I was shocked at how she would leave that perch after, doing everything, or the luck that I thought she had at the time, because I was young and naive, to meet Harry and have him fall in love with her. It was like a fairy tale to me. If you don't know the ins and outs, especially at the time, it seemed like a fairy tale. And I thought, how could she possibly voluntarily step down from that? Apart from the engagement interview, which I did watch, and, red flags galore, that was also a moment where I went, something's off about that woman and that man, to be fair. I'm seeing a lot of criticism being thrown at Meghan's way over this news. And I'm like, Harry's in his 40s and he's a complete fully grown adult and a father to 2 children and presumably has agency. I opened the video with a clip of Harry in his car in California being filmed by the Netflix crew, talking about how happy he is and how his mother was in fact planning on doing exactly what he and Meghan did when they mexited, had she lived long enough to do it. That entire car sequence wasn't a fleeting moment in the series. It lingered, boring us all to tears in the process, but regardless, it lingered because their happiness was one of the main tenets of that, I was going to call it documentary, reality show. We are so happy now. Look at how happy we are with our happy mansion and our happy kids hunting for Easter eggs barefoot. But most importantly, happy to be away from the racist, despotic regime that is the British monarchy. If you were to break it down, and I'm doing this from memory because I literally have not watched that thing again since I reviewed it almost 4 years ago now. Wow, time flies so fast. But from memory, it was about a 70-30 split, with 70% being attacking the British monarchy and of course members of the royal family, and 30% dedicated to just how happy they are. And of course it didn't stop there. Their needless, key point, needless and endless protestations, declarations of immense happiness and bliss only escalated from there. Interview after interview, Meghan in particular would tell anyone who would listen how this is her new chapter of joy and how amazing and beautiful and happy their life in Montecito is with their children. All said, of course, with a frozen manic grin plastered onto her face, which actually made her look like she was in an acute state of agony rather than bliss. And maybe she was. Her body language may have been betraying her. If something is real or true and you know it to be, you're living it, You don't feel the need to shout it from the rooftops and declare it time and time and time again, almost as though you were not just trying to convince the public or your audience, whomever they may be, but yourself. And that is because when something is real, presumably if you're a normal person with a healthy level of self-esteem and self-worth, you don't feel the need to prove it. You don't feel the need to show it off to people. You just live it. And B, because when something is true, may it be your happiness or your intelligence or your talent or whatever, your charm, it's evident. And so when someone does insist on repeating something over and over and over again, our radars naturally flare up. And we start to question, to use Meghan's favorite word, the authenticity of these declarations. The lady, or the couple, doth protest too much. The biggest problem people seem to have, and I think it is very much warranted, is the fact that Meghan and Harry haven't changed. And perhaps the ultimate proof that we have of the fact that they haven't changed is how they broke the news to the king. Per media reports, and normally I wouldn't believe what the media says, I would take it with a grain of salt, or I should say a truckload of salt, but this time there is tendency evidence to support this reporting. Despite the fact that the Sussexes have been planning this move for months, evidenced by the fact that they've not only already secured a home, and no, it is not within royal property, and enrolled their children in British schools, the king reportedly only found out last Sunday, 3 days before the rest of the world was informed on Wednesday. If you're experiencing a sense of deja vu, my friend, you are not alone, and there is very good reason for that. Because it's pretty much what they did 6.5 years ago when they broke the news of Megxit to the world. The Queen was blindsided, famously, when they decided to break the news to her along with everyone else through their now defunct Instagram account, Sussex Royal. Now, yes, the king was told, I assume personally, and at least 3 days before the rest of the world was told, but really, it's because they've been knocked down a few pegs, even in their own heads. That hubris that they were living off back in 2020, January 2020, it's definitely a thing of the past, even to them. Because don't forget, at the time, they were still universally adored and still practically on top of the world with everything and everyone at their feet. But the point of this is, clearly, they're still hell-bent on playing these childish games, on forcing some sense of control. You know, these people, especially Meghan, I would say, based on, years of observation at this point, they need control. They almost need it like oxygen. In fact, many argue, and I am inclined to believe, that her lack of control over her image in the UK is precisely what made her want to go to the US. And so in an effort to secure this control, they play these games of, we're going to do all these things and we're not going to tell you until the last minute. Again, behaving like children instead of the middle-aged adults that they chronologically appear to be, and yet obviously are mentally not. And if they haven't changed in this aspect of just having the courtesy to tell someone, being the king, that, hey, we're planning on coming back, at least a few months before you intend to, I don't know. It's just, again, common courtesy. They met him in July with the children. They couldn't find the time, a few minutes to drop it in the middle of conversation back then and be like, hey, by the way, we're moving back. I don't know, thought you should know. When? Next month? Even that would have been barely any notice. But it's better than finding out 3 days before the rest of the world. So if they haven't changed in that regard, then what could possibly persuade us to believe that they've changed at all? This return, of people like to say the prodigal son, the failed son, didn't really shock me or surprise me. But what never ceases to amaze me is the utter shamelessness of these two individuals. For them to write books and make docuseries and podcasts and everything under the sun to derail the monarchy, to personally attack its senior members, for them to literally make it their career for years. That's how they made millions. And then when people lost interest, well, their careers, if you can call it a career, went down the drain. But for them to do all of that, using lackeys like Omid Scobie to call King Charles and Catherine, Princess of Wales, racists, through that accidental translation error in the book, only to come back crawling a mere 6.5 years later, that would make any normal, quote unquote normal, because what is normal really, human being with a healthy dose of humility and shame hide their faces forever. And I mean forever. But like Andrew and Fergie before them, these two are utterly shameless. And that's actually one of the many elements that make them so dangerous to be around. There's predictably and very disappointingly a lot of media pressure directed at William to reconcile, to be the bigger person. You are the elder brother after all. You should reach out and attempt to make amends. Never mind, you're the victim in all this. You're the one who's been attacked relentlessly and needlessly and entirely unprovoked by your brother and sister-in-law for the past, almost decade. But still, no, you should be the bigger person and fix everything, make amends. Now, I've already made a video quite recently, maybe a month ago, talking specifically about why this is so unfair and so irritating and so one-sided too. Not to mention infantilizing in terms of Harry, this grown man who's in his 40s. They make it out like he's some child and William has all the responsibility to fix things. But I don't want to repeat myself, so please do check out that video. I will put it up here in the cards if you haven't seen it already. It's a really in-depth discussion about how wrong and how dangerous that attitude can be. The thing is, William's not an idiot. And people really don't like that. Evil people who like to take advantage of you, they don't like it when you're not an idiot. It's like you're not playing by the rules. Their rules, I should say. Because if you ask me, and this might be harsh, but only an idiot would forgive Harry and let him back in and welcome him with open arms and let him around his wife and children after Spare and the docuseries and the racism and kicking Catherine when she was already down with that whole, Meghan has freakish attention to detail. She'd never commit such a Photoshop error. After all that, the children being attacked through the Sussex squad, the Wales innocent children, while Meghan and Harry look the other way and preach about the problems of bullying, especially online, towards children. How can anyone seriously, legitimately, with a straight face, expect Prince William to be the one to step up and make amends? Harry's constantly talking about forgiveness. They have to apologize, and then I'm ready to forgive. Well, where's Harry's apology to William? And mind you, even if he did apologize, it's like a death by 1,000 cuts. It will never be the same again between them. Never. And for very good reason. Because what tends to happen when two deeply insecure, unhappy, and vindictive people are faced with what true happiness, true love, and true success actually looks like, which is what William and Catherine embody, rather than use that as fuel, as inspiration to be better, to do better, as Meghan and Harry love to say, they resort to the lazier and far more draining and fruitless alternative of destruction. Destruction is the name of the game. Like a bully in the playground who wants to rip the heads off all the other kids' dolls simply because they don't have one themselves. And from what I've seen, when Meghan and Harry are, on the path of destruction, when they're hell-bent, they take no prisoners. They don't discriminate. Meghan's always talking about discrimination and how, she suffered at the hands of discrimination. Well, I guess she's not being a hypocrite in that regard, because to her, men, women, children, everyone's fair play. This reminds me of a video I made a few years ago, end of 2023, called The Obsessed or The Obsession. And it was all about Meghan's obsession with Catherine and how dangerous it made her and how Catherine should basically make sure that, Meghan can't get within 100 kilometers of her if she can help it. That risk assessment, based entirely on real world data rather than speculation, hasn't shifted in the slightest since. In fact, if anything, I would say it's only gotten worse, especially after Catherine's triumphant return post-treatment and the worldwide adulation that she effortlessly inspires. In a nutshell, she represents everything that Meghan wants and could never be. William, too, represents everything that Harry isn't, but wishes so desperately that he was. He's also one of the most handsome men on the planet. I mean, you can come fight me if you can find me. And that's why, as long as William and Catherine are William and Catherine, it's dangerous. And I mean this seriously, having personal experience. I'm not about to rehash everything that I've talked about over the years I've been on YouTube, but jealousy, obsession, it can be life-threatening. I hope that William never lets his guard down around Harry and Meghan. Even if he lets him in, he should never fully trust him, ever again. And from what I've seen, I don't think he has any intention of doing that whatsoever. There's been reports of Meghan being offered some role in the UK, and while I initially doubted its veracity and thought maybe her PR team put it out there to use as justification for their move. Can you imagine how silly that is? The woman was practically living in Hollywood with access to top tier producers and CEOs and Ted Sarandos, etc., etc. And she has to go to the UK to get offered a movie role. It's just wacky. But then there were reports of the role being withdrawn, the offer being withdrawn from her because of the backlash. If that's true, I think the source was Tina Brown. Her book on them sucked. I don't know how reliable she is. But if it's true, I guess it's not a PR ploy, because it wasn't just denied. They said they withdrew the offer. If Tina Brown's talking, out of her behind, then it could have still been a PR tactic. You let me know what you think in the comments below. I suppose it doesn't really matter, because the fact of the matter is she failed in Hollywood. Why wouldn't she? She has a demonstrable track. She has a demonstrable She has a demonstrable track record of not being able to hack it in the industry. Before Harry, with Harry, if there is an after Harry, and this return to the UK is the ultimate proof of that. Why else would she leave? Throughout the years, commentators such as myself have been accused of being spiteful and jealous, and we just can't stand how beautiful and smart and successful she is, when we were just saying what we were seeing, the facts, the writing was on the wall. We weren't speculating. We saw the evidence in real time, flop after flop after flop, and then people from the industry would speak out and talk about how much of a failure these two were.
The grifters.
As for happiness, I suppose this is the more poignant section of the video, and it's a good place to end it off. These two are never happy. If there's one thing Meghan and Harry truly have in common, other than their, bitter personalities and vindictiveness, is the fact that they have both never been happy. Whether for good reason or not, the fact remains that they're the problem. It's actually a good thing when you think about it that they went to the US and tried there, because now even the naysayers, you've got nothing to fall back on. Clearly they're the problem. If you were unhappy before the marriage, and then you were unhappy during the marriage, when you were still working royals, when the entire world was at your feet, you had everything served to you on a platinum platter, forget the silver one, and you were still unhappy, and then you went to the US and you were offered the most exclusive multi-million-dollar deals from mega corporations such as Netflix and Spotify, and you still weren't happy. And now they're going to come back and they're not going to be happy, because the problem lies inside. And I say this with confidence because I know people like them. I know people who, no matter what, it's always a competition. It's always a deep sense of insecurity. and rage. And it never goes away. It's a cloud over their head, a curse. You know, if Meghan and Harry weren't such nasty people, I'd actually feel sorry for them. As the Japanese say, I would tell them in their new life in the UK, "Gambatte kudasai." Without the kudasai. They don't deserve a kudasai. Gambatte. That's all I have for you today. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Were you blindsided by this move? What do you think of it? Do you think it's gonna last? Do you think it's a temporary thing? I don't know. I think enrolling children in schools points to a more permanent relocation, but the comment section is open for you. Voice your thoughts and opinions, or type them, I suppose, and I'll catch you in the next video. Have a good week ahead of you, everyone. Thanks. See you next time.